Okay, here we go. Angular. It is a it is framework. Yes, which let us to implement single page application. I mean, what is single page application? When we navigate to some site, we can see that when we click on menu, for example, we can see loading, and we can see that all the page is rendered. When we navigate, for example, to Angular IO, it is a site with documentation of Angular, and we will go from one part to another, not so, to another one. We can see that there is no reloading. It means that all of this is in a one page. Component based approach. It is main approach of Angular. Everything in almost everything in Angular is based on components. We can compare the component with HTML tag, but it's specific HTML tag that can contain logic. Angular is popular because it can both run desktop and mobile. It is have models, which called engine models and model approach. Angular models, it's something like JavaScript models. Do you know JavaScript models? Good. It's as I said, it's something like JavaScript models, but it have some difference, some different rules. But it also used to hide some parts. We will get in touch with it in the next lectures, and you will understand the difference it from JavaScript model. Angular is also testable. One of the most features of Angular is that everything goes from the box, as we can say. It means that in Angular, we when we install Angular, we get scenes to test it. I mean, Karma and Jasmine, it goes from the box. Angular was developed by Google, yes, and it's great that such huge company is interested in making our world better. As I say, Angular consists of models, which separate our application for any parts, for some parts. Models can be different. It can be for services. It can be for different parts of Angular application. There are some basic lines which you can be relative to when you implement the application. But more information you will get from the future lectures, which almost be for models and services. Components. It is the second part of Angular that separates our application. And directives. I can tell that we have some kinds of directives in Angular, and some people say that components is also part of directive. But the main difference between these two parts is that components should have template, its own template, and directives and component applied to this template. Template is something like HTML tag, but with your own logic. Directives can be applied not to one template, can be applied to different, depending on where it's used. Services. It is part of Angular that allow us to separate logic from view. View, I mean template of containers. It is part that you can see on the screen. Service is used to make some modifications, make some actions with data. Also, it's used to get data and to keep the data. Router. When we were here, the navigation is allowed by router. Yes, and model can contains component, directive, services, and router. But about different approaches that and ways how you can make your application, we will discuss in future lectures. So, directive. When you hear star here, it is directive. Also, here it is directive. Such directives calls structure directives because they change the structure of the element. This one is from its name, you can understand that it is if, and it's something like JS if, but it's hide this markup. And G4, it's something like for. We have array or relative sequence. I mean array from strings, from different types of data. For example, when we have movie, I mean we have movie with information, with path to its screen, with date of release and something else. It will be just one element of movies array. And in such way, we can iterate and present our markup for one movie for a whole application if our movie is in an array. Services. As I said, services are used to take data from backend. For example, we can make HTTP calls from it to backend, get data here and pass it to component. And we needed to separate our logic, not to pass directly in component. For example, we can take data and we can have some different components. I mean chart, table, and we have the same data for these two components, and we can handle and get the data from backend here. Then in another service, define it to different parts, to chart and to table, and in such way we will have two different views for the same data. router. Router is used to navigate from one page to another. And it have some helpful classes and methods to pass data, to hide that link was clicked, and so on and so forth. How we can start the project? First of all, we have to install global our Angular CLI. Here I have one, but I would like to demonstrate you. It's interesting. Good. We delete it. And now, for example, I want to start the new project. When we set up Angular globally, we just can write ng new and the name of project and press enter. We need some time to install it. Yes, it takes some time, but when it will be installed, we will get everything to work with it. Here it is. This is a folder which was named test project. This is the name that I set during starting. And we have some files. Angular has TypeScript in its own, and because of this, we have test config.json. Your home task also will be with. You will have to set up TypeScript and here configuration that allow us to compile to ES5 and to set file that will be compiled and some different stuff. For your home task, you will have already configured test config.json. Not test config, test lint. It's test config.json is configure out TypeScript, and test lint.json set what rules have to be applied to our project. It led us to make code more clear and also optimize it in some way. Okay, what we have? Protractor. It is for testing with predefined setup. Packages on with some comments to start. As I said, Angular has some features for testing already. Here it is. We can npm run test and test our application if there are some files we suspect it created by default, and here it is how it's look like. Also, we can lint npm run lint, and I would recommend you to make this comment every time before you put your projects to Git repository. I mean, every time you want to push changes, before it you have to run lint for errors. Also, for nowadays we have ESLint, which also allow to make everything TSLint made, but it's more modern. Angular CLI JSON. By the way, to compile all this application, Angular use Webpack, but we can't hear it because it's deep inside. We have ability to eject our inner Webpack. I know maybe with reason to modify it on your choice, but I not recommend you to do it because it's already have all predefined setups. Here defined base structure of application root. Root it source and in source. So is TypeScript is used here. We have main TypeScript and index.html. Output 0. It is dist. Let me show. As I said, we have command npm run build or ng build, or you can just ngb. Strange. Let's try to start it. Yeah. It seems that something went wrong. Okay. Start. Serve. That we delete not models. try to reinstall it. I think that something went wrong during the installation. That's why I try to reinstall node models. Just sorry for that. I will try to do it on another project. And it has success. Here's the link you can click to open, or just in your browser type localhost localhost 4220 4200. Here it is. And we will see the application. I don't know why, and I wouldn't like to spend your time WebStorm or VS Code for Angular project. Does it matter? No, it depends to you. What code editor is more relative to you. I would like to use WebStorm on our project. It's easier to me to work with it. One of the most reasons is work with GitHub. It allows to create branches and so on and so forth in a really fast way. But on my home project, I use Visual Studio Code. So it depends to you. Here is the project. I will be more near get in touch with it when I will tell you about components. But for now, I just want to demonstrate you the command ngserve to start the project. Also, in our package JSON, this is a standard set of scripts. We can run npm run build. Compiling. And we have this here. As per Angular As per Angular JSON config. So, as per our Angular CLI JSON, as its output directory, asset it's a folder for in our structure. Here it is. It's folder to keep our images, also to keep maybe translations. Index.html is start point, main.ts also start point. Here it is. Polyfills test, test for testing, and also configs. Also prefix. It is a good way and a part of name convention to use prefix every time you create your component. I will also show you in today's lecture, and this prefix should be the same as here, as it is. Styles, we have just CSS styles, but during the setup, you will have a choice to choose SCSS, less, stylus, maybe SAS. It also depends on you. I prefer SCSS, but it's just my choice, nothing more. Also, we have development and production modes, linter, and for test, karma. In index.js, we have uproot. Uproot is the first component part files that we enter. Main.ts. It's entry point of our application, and we bootstrap our app module. It is here. It is. It says that we have declaration app component, this one, and bootstrap. It's the entry point. It means that the entry point is app component. That is all that I want to show you about the main structure of Angular. Maybe you have some questions. Okay, then continue. There are a list of commands that allow us to implement component, directive, pipes, services, classes. Here's the list. As you can see, ngg, it's shortcut of ng generate. It means that it generates component with such name or directive or pipe and so on and so forth. Also, by default, it compiles. I would like to show you an example. Not this one. Angular component. For example, I would like to generate component with name test component. It creates HTML spec for testing, TS, and CSS. Also, it creates the folder with such name. There are some flags which we can add here. For example, flag not to implement spec when we create component, or not to implement folder and not to locate it in a folder, just locate it in app in folder that in which you are now. The whole list of these commands you can see on the documentation of Angular. TypeScript. It developed and maintained by Microsoft. Its superset of JavaScript means that the end files in which TypeScript compiled are JavaScript files. And everything that JavaScript can do, TypeScript also can do. It is good to develop for large application because it's give you typification of variables, functions, and different things. And when you have, for example, variable number, you cannot assign a variable. You cannot assign string to this number if you define type number. And it led to avoid mistakes on a stage of compilation and before compilation. It improved code maintainability and readability. What about readability? It means that you can see which parameter, for example, function expect you will pass to it. Yes, it's a good documentation. Also for this reason that you know every argument, every variable and function of its types. We have some syntaxes, sugar, for example, decorators and so on. But it's large enough, and if you can just open your code editor and start to write JavaScript, you cannot do so with TypeScript. You have to install it first, and just then start to use. How to start? npm install -g TypeScript to set globally, and then tsc for every file that you want to compile. Project should contain tsconfig.json. As we can see in Angular, we have such file tsconfig with target and other things that allow us to configure TypeScript, and tslint. Tslint just for links in our file to see in time what we do right, what we do wrong, to see different mistakes that our IDE will highlight to us. Time for demo. in TypeScript, as I said, we have different primitives. It is Boolean, number, string, primitives as in JavaScript. And when we said that is mood good Boolean and set it variable, we can't set it string. You can see that it's wrong, and we see a note about it happy Boolean. Also for numbers of different types with decimal in 16 code, strings, simple strings and string literals. Or it can have union type. For example, if I set Boolean, we will have mistake. If I when I write its name union, when I write union, it allows us to write number, Boolean, and false, and everything we write here for this. But if we just we declare just primitives, and when we try to detect object, we will have an error. Also is for number when we try to set number to string. And it's one of the main features of TypeScript to make the typification. And another one, it let us to make better performance, because we know when we, for example, use function, maybe a bad example is function better with array. When we have array of different types, number, string in our JavaScript, it will work. But if we have an array with the same type, for example, strings, it will work better. It optimize under the hood. Also for functions, when we pass argument of the same type, it works better. And here we name what type will be used. Object and arrays. When we want to declare object, we can do it in such way. We name all the case and set all the types for this case that will be. And here we can see name, type string. And when we change it to number, we will have an error. Or for example, when we try to pass number, we also will have an error. Moreover, now it is good, but if I would like to add additional key, I will have an error, because task is only name and description has. Also, when I miss someone, I will also have an error that I missed some property. In such way, TypeScript helps us to develop and not to do mistakes. or reduce it amount. But when I would like to not to have predefined properties, but have to have every property that I will name after, I write k string. K it is here, and it means that it is string, and the value is also string. For example, when I write here 2, I will have an error. But if here I try to add some properties, some additional property, I mean here, yes, we have an error. But here we have no property B, and I declare it, and it's all right. We have no error. Arrays. We have type of array element, it's numbers, and it also relative to all methods that array has. For example, when we try to push 5 as a string, we will have an error because array should be a number only. But if we try to pass 5, everything all right. Also, we can make union type, as you already know. And also it will be all right. It will have as numbers as strings. Tuple. It's specific type that say which element on, let me say in another way. We have array of 2 elements. 0, 1, it is index for array. And tuple say that 0 will be number and 1 will be string. For example, when we try to add here something, we will have an error. When we would like to remove something, we will have an error. Let me say in the next analogy. Here we have an object with predefined properties, which name and description. Here we have something like object with predefined properties 0 and 1. And for 0 we have number, for 1 we have string. And it says that we have no to, when we add, we have to index. And now we need to add this one. It's all about object and arrays features. It's earlier. Also, we can define types for functions. Here it is, function with type void. Void, it means that we have no return. We have just function which do something under its body. For example, here with console log, when function is returned something, we have to add type that it returns. Null its type, undefined its type, and when we return undefined, we cannot write undefined because, as we know, in JavaScript, when we have such one, we know that it's return undefined, and also in TypeScript can define type for string, also for objects. Also, we can add types to income in two arguments. And when we try to add something else, we will get an error. Yes. Also, when we try to return another object, we will get an error. Or if you try to return, here we wait for string, but we return a number, and also we have an error. Any type. It is void, and we do not return anything. Any. It's an evil in TypeScript, but sometimes in very rare cases we need it. It means that when we declare variable b in such way, it's the same as it is. Our compiler sees that we declare it and assign it a number, and it assign type of two variable in the same time. And now we declare it's as a number, and we try to pass a string to a number type, and we have an error. To avoid it, we can declare in a such way, or in a such way. It's called casting, when we try to cast type to this value. We can pass additional parameters to a function. For example, it let us to call log name with one argument. If we will not have such question sign, yes, we will have an error because it expects two arguments. Now it is expect one or two arguments, and when we pass 3 arguments, we will have an error. We got 3 instead of 1 or 2 arguments. Also, it expects 1 or 2, and when we call it without arguments, we also will have an error. But what to do if we want to pass some arguments, but we don't know how much of them we would like to pass? We can do it with spread operator and define type any. Here it is, because now test first is string, this first, and other different types. As we know, in old version of JavaScript, we have such object as argument, and it was array-like object with length, but without array properties, array methods. And here we show that it all the rest part of it is array, as we can make with arguments in JavaScript. But if I would like to pass only numbers, I will have an error because it's not number. Number and string. You're welcome. But I would like to pass Boolean, and I will have an error. Slice for each other. Other it is an array, and it have all methods of array. We have an error because slide does not exist on string or a number. But if I pass something it is an argument. And here I have to define it as any to avoid such mistake. Optional parameter I said about it. Also, we have default arguments. I mean, here it is a problem. When I will remove question mark, it will be a problem. But when I set as default, I will not have a problem because I pass in a such way two parameters, but one of them was predefined. Also, it is an example of these predefined parameters. Okay, string number. It means that it can return an object in a such type with different fields. For example, when I remove string and return object, it's all right. When I return object with another property, it's all right. Also, it can return number and string. But I won't try to return Boolean. Sorry, not Boolean. Test. True. I will have an error. And I don't like errors. Now I haven't. Also, we can define types for arrow functions in a such way. It's arguments and it return value. Type never. It also additional type of TypeScript, which means that you will never reach return. I mean, when you write return, you will have an error because type never expects that you will throw error. And when you define the return type of function, you can cast it as any as another types to avoid error. But you can't do so because they are not compatible. Type any it is all type, everything that we have, and we can do it in such way. Also, we can do it in such way because this type is higher than this type. It's almost the same, have two properties, but have additional one. But try to avoid such cases. It's confusing. Interfaces and classes. What are please. What is the main difference of interface and classes? Interface not implement by its own. It just interface. Classes have implementation under it. I mean, when we have function toggle done in interface, it means that it's just that this object will just contain method toggle done, which will be void, nothing more. But when we do when we implement classes, we have to define this method with concrete implementation. Interfaces can consist of properties and also of methods. So we can do it in such way and in a such way. And we have different fields in our interface, and these fields we have in our object. For example, when we declare here name and description, we can set I test with such fields and use it here. And also when we pass things that is not here, we will get an error. But when I remove one of properties, I will have an error. Do you remember about question mark? Here it is. In interfaces, we also can define question marks, not necessary fields. Classes. We can define the class that implement interface. It means that interface have properties name, description is done, and our class should have properties name, description, and is done. For example, when we remove someone, we will have error here. But when we remove in this one, we will have error that we not implement interface, because interface has such field, and class should also have it. Also, when we want to implement some interfaces, we set it with quote. For example, we have task manager here, and it implements toggle done. And when we remove toggle done, we also will have an error, but it's relative to iTask Manager. Interface can extend different another interface. It means that now when we iTask has 3 fields. And when we set const test with type iNewTest, iNewTask, we will have an error because its due date, which is here, it not have due date. And to avoid an error, we should pass due date, which have to be or date or string. Classes also can extend other classes. And we have new class, new task. We extend class task. It means that this class have to have all things class task have. And implement new property, iNewTask. iNewTask has field due date. Here it is. And we pass new we pass name, description is done, and due date to define it. And as we extend our new task from task, we have to pass into super these 3 arguments. And when we implement method, we can call this one. As you know from JS, it's not different. But what is different? It's public, protected, read-only, and private. What does it mean? Private, it thing that we can see only from inside our component, inside our class. For example, when we implement new task, we should pass these arguments. here it is. And additional info, it getter and setter, and we can see it here. Description. It is public property, and we can see it here. Every public property we can see in the list, but can you see it? Tell 3 secrets. Private method. We cannot see it in the list because it's available only in the class. For example, it helpful methods. For example, I would like to implement this one with tell the secret. And I can reach it here, but I can't reach it outside. Also, I would like to set it as private. Correctly, iTask, because I can't do it because iTask should have public methods with such name. It means that object which this class will return should have access outside to description. Now I have private additional info. It's a string. And when I set dot to test, I can't see additional info with this. I can reach it as setter and getter, but let me demonstrate. I would like to have and now you can see I declare test A, and now I pass test A, and I've got an error. It's private and only accessible with task, with class task. It means inside of it. I see a question. Is public-private protected often used in commercial project or rather not? Yes, it's often used. Private is very often. I can tell that almost in every component we write, we use it. Protected. Protected, it's we can see its properties, these properties, just in class that extend class with protected. I mean, protected secret. Yes, it is protected field, and yeah, I can't see it outside. But here, not return. Protected here, I can see, and protected secret I also can see because it is extends from task. Yes, and we use it private and protected, and use it to hide some logic, some methods, and some properties. Also, we can see here read-only property. It means that we cannot assign protected secret another value. For example, look, I would like to, when I toggle, I would like to change my protected secret. I've got an error, but I can do it in a such way. I can declare just the type for it, and in constructor, just in constructor, I can set another value. I can set value to it. But when it's settled, I can do it in the other place. But by the way, in constructor, I can do it for such many times as I would like, but never do so. Never write code in such way. Abstract class. What does it mean? I would like to have vehicle. I can't do it because we can't implement abstract classes. All we can do, extend abstract classes, extend it to new class and implement this class. My vehicle type of abstract class, and our car is extends abstract class, and it also of abstract class. Yes, and it is correct. But what is different between abstract class and interface with method? Abstract class can implement this method. We can write logic here, but in interface, it tells that, hey guy, we just have a function which is void, and maybe it can take some arguments, but you cannot implement it. That's all about classes and interfaces. We have some features. See, it's mean generic. There are some cases when we want to use the same function in different place. And I would like in one place it takes string and return string array. And in another place, I would like it to take number and return number array. Okay, I can do it in such way. As you can see, all right, but it's a bad practice to use it. By the way, I think it also be all right, but it is a bad practice. I want in one place to have just numbers and in another place just strings, and I want to know that I have numbers and strings. Because of this, I have to implement generic. It means that I have test and its array of strings. I pass argument here, and it is a string, and I got the result of strings. And if I declare it as a number, I will get an error because string is not assignable to number. It's different types. Such manner, it's not easily to understand that I would like to pass string and get string. Because of this, it's better to write it in a such way. We can see that strange, something strange symbols. And these strange symbols means that it's string. Okay, this is string. I've got it. And test2 also with number. And look, when I pass number, I tell that it will be number, and I pass string. I've got an error. I change to number, and everything all right. And how we can test that it's number? Array of numbers. Number array is not assignable to string. String it's we declare just now. Interface is there. Also, we can use generic with interfaces. It means that we declare string and pass it here, and it means that data is string. It's because I not pass any arguments, any type. I pass such one and such one. But I've got an error because it has to be string. Do you remember about unions? We also can take it here. And even interfaces. I will demonstrate. task data. We've got a problem. Now it's all right. We have such thing as type. List string. Type, it's something like variable, but just for types. For example, maybe it will be more understandable. We have type. And now we declare type as string. Our look const test class type. I've got a problem because I already have such variable. Here it is, and I write string. All right, it's the same, but I would like not to have string. It's dummy. I would like to have some string. And now my test can only be this one or this one. And here we can see an example of string list. It means that if I set such way, list, here it is. It have to be so. As you can see, type is something like const in JavaScript or Latin JavaScript. We declare variable and set concrete value to it, and then use it. Also, it's working the same manner for classes. That's example that I already show. Enum. What is enum? We can tell that enum is something like object with props. When we write props without declarations in enum, it always goes from with numbers from 0 to high 1. Why do I need it? I would like to have readable data. For example, today, day of week, Thursday, and it helps me to set all parameters I want that I declare here. The more useful case to use it is switch case. You declare switch as type and enum. Sorry. Ah, we can have it as a type. When we write variable, we declare such type and it's good. And we pass test. Give me 1 minute, please. I will try to understand what I do wrong. Mm-hmm. Test one. Mm-hmm. That's why. Here, how it works in switch cases. We have a problem with return in a such way. just because of our linter. And I try to pass concrete value and not to get it. It is a good practice to use enums in switch cases. What about enum? I can tell. Well, we can not just set values here. We can write values case with values. For example, if it comes from 0 to 5 here, when we declare value 5, the next will be 6. Your question, can we specify other values than a number, for example, ABC, or yes, we can. Here we can see. And by the way, it is correct. And I can set my favorite mail agent mail. We've got an error, but when we use in such way, it's all right. About number types, number values, it comes in increase order from 0 till the time when you redeclare it. For example, we expect that it will be 1, but we declare it as 5, and because of this, next will be 6, and so on. But when we declare in such a num string, we will got an error for the second. For the next after the string. But we can declare different strings and create the enum just of all strings. And yes, we can also use it in interfaces and then use interface here and use value of this enum. And one more thing, it is commonly used practice when you implement interface and when you name it, please use I before it, because it's easily to understand that this interface. When you see such node, you can think that it is class, but when you see iCat, you think it's very strange name of class. And I, in most cases, means that this interface, and you can see here it starts from I and here. But we can call it without I, but but best practice to use it as per name conventions. It is all about TypeScript and intro. I would like to tell you about your homework for this part. Intro. What you will be doing? You will create something like YouTube client app. Do you have a link for this repository? Can you set pluses if you have? Okay, great. Figma. Never mind. I will pass you in a chart. If you can't find, please look it here. Figma project. You will create something like such application. It all components, and what you have to do in this task, you have to install Angular CLI. We highly recommend you to use SCSS. Use ngCLI to create components, directives maybe if you need. You can find it here. What I'm talking about. This comments for command line. And here are some recommendation for project structure. You have app, application and component in this directory. Now I show what I mean. Folder app, and in this folder you'll have components, models, models, and app component. App component, start component, and we have now to do a separate folder for it. Here it is. In model, it is recommended to use interfaces. It's quite enough for most parts of application. Also, here's a link. You can find test lint config. Please use it. It's good enough, and it will help you to understand more TypeScript. Your task is such page, this page, and you have to think about how you can separate it for different parts. I mean, here you can see the card. Inside card you can see button and different other things. Also, you can see search string with some buttons and settings and so on. You can see username with label. Maybe it is a list, I don't know. Think how you will separate this for different components. and your task is create markup for this one. Not logic, just separate it in different files and create markup. Here's evaluation criteria. It's finish of the first lecture, but today we have the second one, Angular component. Tell me please, do you need to rest something like 5 or 10 minutes? Angular CLI supports CSS from the start. When you set up the project, you will have an ability to choose preprocessor what you will have used, less SAS, SCSS, or just simple CSS. There will be question, what would you like, and a list of preprocessors, and you will choose the necessary. Okay, then we will break for 5 minutes. Unfortunately, I don't know what time do you have now in Minsk. 10 hours and 10 minutes. It means that in 10 hours and 15 minutes, we will continue. Okay, I'm with you. And can you continue? Are you ready? Okay. Components. As I say in previous lecture, it's one of the commonly used parts of Angular, which allow us to separate our application in some parts. By the way, don't worry if you will late for some minute because the lecture is recording and record will be available to you. Component. As I say, it's something like HTML tag, but with additional logic. It can consist of some HTML tags. It consists of template. I tell that component. It is also directive. Directives includes component in its own, but the one of the difference between component and directive that component have template. Let's look on a project. Here component, and that is what I mean. Template URL. By the way, this part is called metadata. This is decorator. This is metadata. Metadata for directives and components can take selector, and when we use it in markup, index.html, we can see uproot. Uproot. This is this selector, and we can place in our markup it with selector. But template, that is what component includes, consists of. For example, here template URL. Also, we can have just template. What is the difference? Template means that we have to place our markup here, for example. And when we start it, our local host. Hello world. I write just template here, and when I change it, hello world. Hello. I can see also it here, but in most cases we don't use template. Use template URL, which relative to this one. And now we will see another markup. Here it is. And component always have to have or template URL or template. Class. I will close it. Class. Here it is. App component. Usually our class is named as this one to make consist code. And prefix. In our selector, we should have prefix which is relative to this one prefix. It's name convention for Angular. Yes, you can see here disable this string. Let disable TypeScript check. And if I not so. If I remove it, I can see an error here. Yes, we can. We have some set of rules that disable our test lint, but it's bad practice to use it. Here it is just for demonstration purpose. And our class contains properties and methods that can have code which use support view. It means that, for example, this constructor, let's look for this one, for example. Oh, it's tests. By the way, in such way, tests look like. You will have additional separate lecture for it. Properties, which declared, and methods. And here we have no constructor. We don't need it for now, but later I will explain the reason of use it. Metadata. As I said, this is metadata. It's for styles URL. It's for our style. Template URL. It's for our template. HTML. It's our view part. And selector. It's property that allow us to use it, for example, here in markup. Yes. App binding example and selector. I can tell that it's something like tag name. We have binding in our component. Let's comment this for now. We have a binding example component, and what we see here, we don't need it. Here it is. a binding component. Not. Mhm. Okay, we declare here some properties, declare some methods, but how can we use it? Such thing with two brackets. It's name interpolation. Can you see message here? Yes, it is message from here. We declare hello, I'm message, and and we can see it here. Hello, I'm message. We see it because of interpolation. Also, we can not use interpolation and write our text here, but it's almost don't use in real world. Interpolation also let us write some JavaScript expressions. For example, 2 plus 2, and it's calculate. We can see 4. Also, we can, don't know, write an array and use methods of array. And in such way, we will see the result of this method. But it's also just to demonstrate some abilities to you. Often it's used in such way. We can place test. We can place text here in our tag, for example, or we can write, I don't know, method public to get access to this one. We need our message to be public. I mean, when I write private and place it here, I can see it here, but it's bad for compilation and it's bad for Angular itself. When we write public, we know that this property will be used in template or maybe in another component. Later I will demonstrate it. I will demonstrate to you how it will work. Also, I can set method public get message. And as I say, for TypeScript, we return value. We return type. As it method which return string, we have to write return and string and in such case you can do something in a such way. string goes here. It is the string which returned from our function. Here it is. But try not to place methods. Try to place only properties here. It is better for performance. Also, we can use interpolation for attributes. Yes, image path, and what we have inside image path, asset as our folder for images, Angular PNG. Here it is. Yes, when I'm right. But also we can do it in such thing called interpolation. But there is another one thing which called binding. And we will see the same result. And for attributes, it's better to use binding interpolation just for string and replace some text inside text. Also, we can write even in such a way. You can see that element doesn't require attribute source because we just can set source. But in some cases, we have to define attribute. Width of image is 200. Sorry, 200. And I would like to increase it. And now it's bigger. I can do calculation here, but it's better to do calculation inside our component. Here it is. Now we can see both of them because also we have width here for another one image. It's the same width. And please look at this picture. When we pass, we have property binding and event binding. It's two kinds of binding. Property binding we need when we want to pass property from class to template. Here it is. We have property image. Yes, property image. And we pass it to our markup with such brackets, square brackets, and it called binding, property binding. But okay, but when we want to do some action, we have to have event binding with such brackets. And event binding gets event from our template and pass to class. For example, here handle click. Handle click, it's a method here, and it takes mouse event. We pass $event. It's what we pass. Let's find this button click, button called click. Here it is. And what to do? Event click, console log event. Let's see. I will open my console, clear it, and when I click, I can see mouse event. Yes, this is change detection. This is lifecycle hooks, and later I will tell you about it. But now it's interesting mouse event. You get the mouse event with all of these properties. For example, if I want to just target get, I click, and now I can see span which was clicked, and now I can see button which was clicked. I click the same, but it's span inside button. Okay, we have property binding and event binding. But in some cases, we have to have two-way data binding. It means we have property and pass it to template and listen to event and pass the result here. It's look in a such way. And the model, you can see property binding, event binding. Let's see, type something and observe the result. It is here. Type something and observe the result. Look, we have input with two-way data binding. And now username, string, empty username. We have placeholder username. Here it is. Now I began to type. I change it here, and my username also changed. And you can see hello type here. It comes from tag P, hello and username. It's interpolation which relative to our username. And we can see in a such way that our username as a property changes. And if it is directive, which tells that when we change username, if it is not undefined, for the start it's undefined, we can see nothing here and nothing here. And now I write O, it appears with this text when we have something. But it's for the future lecture. Okay, we have in our component class template, metadata, property binding, event binding, and two-way data binding. application layout. That is simple HTML markup, but it can also be Angular markup. I mean, menu we can have as a separate component, header as a separate component. We can have feed as component, and inside of it, post as component. And it's look like this. By the way, our component structure looks like tree structure. Component implementation. We create component feed in components field folder. When we okay, let me see an example. GG component where I'm located. I'm located in Angular components. Good. NGC, it's a shortcut for component. Feed. Okay. Components because if I create now just feed, I will get a folder inside of app which with name feed, yes, as test component I create, but I would like it to be in components. Then I set components / feed. Okay, what I see, feed. Is because it's not in Git repository and not relative to it, because of it, it's red. Component constructor we don't need for now. And the J on it also. Red because it implement G on it, but we delete it. And now it's good. It comes from TypeScript. Yes, if you remember that class can implement some method just. I would like to test. It's redundant because string, and we just place string, we can remove it. Okay, now I would like to place it's with interpolation. Okay, and I have selector. Yes, add feed. And I want to place it in app component. It's a good place for my feed, I think. Okay, let's go. Test best. Here it is. But one more thing. When I use command line to create component, I have app module, and can you see feed component? It comes in declaration array. It means if I remove it from here and my application is working, I will see nothing. Moreover, I will see an error in console. is not known element. Because of this, I have to add it to declarations. And now everything good. Okay. Browser module, it's we have it in app module. Here it is. We need it to start our application. Animation we don't need, but also mat, it's from material UI, from material Angular. We can implement things without it. Forms module. When I demonstrate you two-way data binding, I show you. By the way, it also called banana box because it's banana in box. I show you ng model, and we need 4 modules for ng model. When I comment it or remove, I will get an error. Template parse error ng model since it's known property input. Ng model it is this one, ng model. And now we'll go to selector, template URL, styles URL. I'll tell you about it. One more thing about styles URL. Let's on this one see. Add feed. Styles URL. Styles URL is relative to this one. And when I declare color red, I can see it red, yes, but also I can place it here. Style string. Okay. I'm wrong. Let's go to documentation. Here it is. It how it should look like. Okay, my mistake was I place it not as string. And I separate it on different strings. Blue. And now it's blue. But as with template, it's better to place it in style URLs because we separate our HTML, our CSS, and logic. We have folder models, and such folder you should have in your home projects. In your task, I see post, and when I place interface here, I should have export. And I can get it in post component with import. Here it is. And in this component, when I come to my markup, and I would like to do something, TypeScript will tell me which properties I can use. Okay, this part is about parent and child relation. Oh, look, I have feed decomposition. Feed decomposition consists of post. Post is my child element. I've got here different posts. That assigned in ng-on init. Posts comes from here, and when I would like to show some posts, let me second position. Here it is. Here it is. This is feed decomposition component, and this is post component. In such way, we call it child, and it we call parent. Also, my feed component is smart component, and my post component is done. What it means? It means that post component just has input and output. It's let me hide it. All our logic we contains in feed decomposition. I mean here we communicate with our post in a such manner. We pass as a prop. Yes, as you remember, it's property binding and it's event binding, but it's our custom event which we create with use of output here. And on output, with use of event emitter, we pass just post. We do not have logic for our data here. We just get it with input and pass it out with output. And because of this, it calls dumb component. It have no logic. All logic we contain in smart component here. We pass like event from our dumb component, and we do all our necessary logic here in smart component. When we click like, we can see that we change, and all logic is here. Also, smart component can take data which is necessary for dumb component. Dumb component just renders this data. It shows how it looks like. It's property binding with input and event binding with output. And two-way data binding. Here is example which I show you. Two-way data binding presented by ng model. Smart and presentational component. This concept which I explained to you now. Smart component. This smart component and services. For example, it can be now in this example, we get data from just const array of posts, but in real world we get data not from here. We for this purpose we use constructor And it names dependency injection. And it shortcut. And data we get from this service. This service make HTTP calls. We inject it in our component, and in JUnit we do something like HTTP service get data in such way. Now everything red because we have no HTTP service, but common concept is the same. We apply our data to our posts in JUnit. When we have HTTP service, we get data from there. When we have no, we can get data just from here. Yes, all these items is about logic here. We get data and we handle it on event. This smart component know how to handle data, how to modify it. Presentational. It's have just input and output. It's stateless. Stateless means that it just get data and render it. And smart component has this data as state. Modify it, know every change about it. Presentational focus on how things look like. Yes, it's about this one markup. Lifecycle hooks. Okay. One of them is ng on init. We have also constructor, and someone said that it's something relative to lifecycle hook, but it's not. Constructor, it's a part of class, and it have no. It is not relative to Angular. It's just part of TypeScript, part of JavaScript. And John in it, it's a lifecycle hook that goes after constructor. Lifecycle hook has its order. And first of them on changes, then on init. On changes. It's respond for data that we get from anyway. When we have input, firstly works on changes, and firstly it's empty, and then when we get post from parent, we can see it in on changes. Also, it called when our data is changed. For example, here we change is liked to true, here for false, and every time it changes, our ng changes will be called. On init, this lifecycle hook is useful to set our properties here, for example, or later you will know about React.js and for make subscriptions. Do check. Do check is relative to change detection. It's mechanism of Angular that will be discussed in future lectures. But if two of these are very useful and very often used, this one almost don't use, and in most cases we have to use it if something went wrong. If Angular could not detect changes by himself. And G after content init. We have such thing as ng content. If you know about HTML fragment, it's something relative. If you don't know, it tag set disappear. We can place here another component, for example. And it will render just its markup. And this lifecycle hook goes after this component initialized. This is something relative to do check and goes after content of this component checked. After viewing it, we have in our feed decomposition component, post component, and this lifecycle hook calls after this component is init, and this after when that component checked. On destroy goes when our feed decomposition component disappear from markup. And in this, on destroy, we have to unsubscribe from different events. It helps to avoid memory leaks. This is all properties of metadata. Here we can see just 3. It's 3 more commonly used. But also we have animation, change detection. Change detection is useful via concept. Detection, detect. change detection strategy on push default. Always we use default, but sometimes, for performance optimization, we can use on push. Here we pass property as object post interface, but it is object. Here it is. And with default strategy, when we change this field, our change detection works. But when we use on push strategy and we change just this one, it will not use, it will not work, and it will not work until we change the link to the object. Encapsulation. View encapsulation shadow DOM, emulated, native, and none. These all things relative to how our styles applied. And it separates styles for components. For example, when we use one of these, we will have we can set encapsulation. Sorry. Styles are applied to just this one component. But if you want to apply these styles to another components, we can change encapsulation metadata. Export as host inputs, interpolation, model ID. All of these properties you can see and get in touch with them in React, in Angular. Here is useful link which will be available to you. I will give them to you in Discord. One more thing I would like to notice. One more thing I would like to notice. We have ng template. And we have ng content. Difference between these stuffs is next. When we use they all hide, they all not rendered on the page. But this one is used every time. And this one is used only by condition. I mean ng if true. And for example, and for example, we have tag p with some text. ng if is text applied. It is Boolean. But if you want to template, if you want to show something on true, not just hide this one, we can write else error. And here it is, we write error. And when we use this one, if this true, we will see some text. But this reference, here it is, we used to display error. And ng template used in such cases. Here it is. The last thing is ViewChild. Here it is. For example, I would like to get this tag input from inside the component. In such way, in such case, I have to use ViewChild. It comes from Angular core. It have static and in such way, when I use it from markup, it element ref, because input it is element and it is element ref. Element ref let's for example here. Have native element, and native element it is this input. And for example, if I want to have value from it, I can write native element dot value. Also, we can use it as ref for component. In such case, we don't need to set this call ref on element. We have up inner, and we declare inner component, and when we will use this one, we will get an access to properties and methods of our inner component, this one, property method. And it is about ViewChild. Also, we have ViewChildren. What is ViewChildren? For example, I have not one user input, but I have some of them. And in such way, ViewChildren. We don't need static. And it is not element ref, it's query list. Query list is generic, and query list of element refs. What is query list? Query list, it is array-like object. Why array-like? Because as you know, array-like it's object that has length. It has states, first, last component, and it has methods like map, filter, find, reduce for each. It works like array method for each and reduce and so on, but it's not methods of array. If you see, you can also use toArray and different others. When you, for example, work with for example, work with post, you can set it is component. Because of this, you can just set ViewChildren like so, and work with it as with array. The last thing that I will show you, it is your home task. Component, directive, pipes. Component structure. This is your also part of your home task, but you have to implement. This is task about component, directives, and pipes, but we know only about Angular components, and you have to do only those part of it, which relative to components. That's all. Thank you for attention. Yeah, great. Maybe you've got questions. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you. Bye. Mm, Yes, Mackey, you can ask question if you hear me. Um, as far as I understand, you've got uh, time till next Tuesday. Yeah, something like 5 days. Any other questions? Okay, about interview, I think that um, in such case we can speak with you about terms. Uh, no, not only intro, and I will give you a link. And from this link, only part about components. EPAM интервью. EPAM interview for a job. Okay, good. I would like to have a luck for you. Okay. I think that you can discuss it with your mentor, and if you will be late with Angular home task, it will be all right. Yes. Um, yes, he will be review, but you um, maybe you have not to done it. Discuss it with your mentor if he all right. I am okay with it. Mm, Not two tasks. just 1.5. You have not to do all from Angular components and directives task, only part about components. Okay, you are welcome. Bye bye. Good night to you too.